Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, in the last 6 months alone, more than 1,000 school children have been abducted by criminal gangs across northern Nigeria. There was hope for some parents on Sunday as 28 children in Kaduna State were released by their captors, but the kidnapping crisis continues to rock communities. Back in May, more than 100 students were seized by gunmen from a school in Niger State. A ransom was demanded for the release of the children, but when the money, some $73,000, was taken to be exchanged this weekend, it all went horribly wrong, as the person who was supposed to pay the ransom was himself kidnapped. So the children remain in captivity. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by the security and defense analyst, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, who's also the CEO and founder of the security firm Beacon Consulting. Dr. Adamu, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with some positive news. Just briefly tell us how many children were released at the weekend and what condition they were in when they were freed, as far as you could tell.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening. The information stated that 28 of these kids were released, and the circumstances of their release is still a bit hazy. On the one hand, you have the church as well as the school management saying that no ransom was paid, and they sort of justified that by saying that as a church, their position is in line with the Kaduna State government's position not to pay ransom to groups that they described as evil and criminal. Now, on the other hand, you have the parents indicating, even though not formally or officially, that ransom was paid. Now, if we take ourselves back a few days back, 5 of those kids emerged, even though the police indicated that they rescued them. But later, we got to find out that they were in a very strange manner asked by the abductors to gather wood, and it was in the process of gathering that wood that they escaped. Now, 3 of them went straight to their parents, while the other 2 were weak and found themselves in one of the villages, and a good Samaritan saw them and then called the police. So that was the 2 that were displayed by the police. Now, in terms of the condition of the 28 that were released, a significant number of them were in a very weak condition. They appeared injured, and as of today, we've not had whether there is a medical report on their condition, but from the what we saw, not a medical report now, you could see some of them limping, you could see some of them looking really emaciated, and you could see the trauma in their eyes. Beyond that, there hasn't been any official sort of release in terms of what their medical conditions were at the time of their release.
Okay, so 28 freed, 5 escaped apparently, and 1 was released on health grounds by the kidnappers. So a total of 34 are now free, but about 80 others or 111 others or something to that effect, 100 others still in captivity. Do we know why some were released and others were not?
Unfortunately, no. Right now, I think the formal figure, at least given by a representative of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Kaduna, is that about 87 more of those kids are still in the hands of the abductors. Now, why a particular number was released, we're not sure. However, the indication is that the others too would soon be released, perhaps as a result of this engagement, the payment of ransom. We're not sure, but clearly the parents have been engaging with the abductors, and they've been negotiating in terms of monies that they are going to pay them. And it's very likely that when they pay, then this is the batch that will be released. It's also likely that these kids are being held by different camps within the forest. And so maybe that is why a group is released, and then the next one would also continue the negotiation with their parents. Unfortunately, it's not very clear why only a particular number was released as at this weekend.
That's a very interesting point that you raised there, the possibility that the same group of children who were taken away from a particular place might actually be held by different people. Well, let's move to the other story to do with kidnaps in Nigeria, Dr. Adamu, where the person who was actually paying the ransom has now been abducted themselves, and that's in Niger State. I mean, that's quite a dramatic and extraordinary development, isn't it?
Exactly. So this is in Kaduna, where in an Islamic school of really very young kids, we hear one of them is just 3 years old, and from that and then upwards. Now, these kids have been in the hands of the abductors. I think today makes it 57 days that the kids are in the hands of the abductors. A few days back, out of the engagement and negotiation between the abductors and the families of these kids, they agreed to pay them, I think, 30 million naira. And these are really peasant farmers, very poor people in rural communities. I'm told that they sold their last belongings, and some of them collected loans and all that, and then gathered that 30 million and then took that to the abductors. Now, it is said that the abductors counted that 30 million naira, and that there was a shortfall in what they were expecting. In other words, it wasn't up to 30 million. We don't know how much was missing in that sum, and that was the reason why they now abducted the elderly person that took the money to them. Whether they held him on the grounds that he was the one who took some of the money, or they held him on the grounds that they would only release him if the balance that is missing is provided. Unfortunately, that is not clear as well. But it is, unfortunately, one of the most common occurrence in kidnap for ransom situations, where you have people who sometimes step in as a result of one reason or the other. It could be because they are clerics or elderly people, and they are respected by both sides to support the negotiation process. They sometimes, because of the lack of technical experience in handling such delicate issues, fall victims of situations like this. Is unfortunately quite common in Nigeria.
Yes, and I mean the amount of 30 million naira, or something like $73,000. I mean that's quite a lot of money. I mean, is the amount being asked for going up? Is it getting higher? I mean, each time these things happen.
So I'm told that this particular group have been paid so far 50 million naira by the family members of these kids, and they are yet to release the kids. And there is an audio message going around by allegedly the leader of the group that kidnapped these kids, and another group that in Kebbi State. You recall the federal college there in Kebbi. Now he's saying that yes, he's interested in financial ransom, but he's also interested in the government releasing some of his members that are in government custody, and that even if the financial ransom is paid, then he's not likely to release the captors, except if his own family members are released. So it appears we're dealing with a situation of both criminal as well as, to an extent, political abduction. Now, if that is the case, I think it's absolutely unfair to allow the family members of these victims alone to be carrying out the negotiation process. Clearly, it is beyond their control to have persons in government custody released. And so even if they continue to pay this money, unfortunately, except if other means are employed, this person is not likely to release these kids. Again, these are all information that is coming out, and we're piecing together. It's very possible that the two groups are, of course, there is a lot of propaganda and sometimes misinformation involved in all of this. The only way sort of to verify this is if you are directly involved in the negotiation process, which unfortunately I'm not.
And Dr. Adamu, what about the government who have clearly failed to provide enough security? Because it is the failure to tackle the widespread insecurity which is what is leading to these kidnappings almost on a daily basis.
I wish it was as simple as that. It's a combination of both security as well as other factors, including the economy. And yes, you use the word government, but then from a position, if I was going to play the devil advocate, the question I'm going to ask you is, are you referring to the federal government or the state government? Now, this is important because the ungoverned spaces that where these bandits hide are under the sort of control of the state government. Now, that doesn't excuse the federal government, as it were, but you recall that not too long ago, it emerged from one of the governors, specifically the governor of Kebbi State, saying that the president has requested them to take charge and control these ungoverned spaces. And I side with the president. It is their responsibility. Those forested spaces are under their control. They are economic reserves that should be used for such, especially for states that have these high levels of unemployment and economic issues, as well as socioeconomic grievances with a youth bulge that is unemployed and frankly that does not have any aspirations, as it were. So why not turn these forested reserves that are being used by bandits into some form of economic venture? And because they are failing to do that, these bandits have continued to dominate this forest and use them for criminal purposes. On the other hand, the argument of the governors is that, well, we do not have any control over the armed security operatives. Even if we want to flush out these bandits from this forest, we need the support of the federal government. And to that extent, they are right. And that is the constitutional lacuna that we need to address. How do we decentralize the security structure arrangement to allow governors some level of security control to ensure that they are able to dominate and control the spaces within their jurisdiction and disallow bad elements such as these bandits to use the forested and ungoverned spaces that exist in their state. So there is a constitutional lacuna there. It's not just security. There are issues that have to do with the constitution, then economic issues, and sometimes even social issues because of the collapse of social order, which is rooted in some cultural practices and unfortunately too some religious practices.
Well, absolutely. And as we said at the outset, I mean, these abductions are happening almost on a daily basis. I mean, are we any closer to knowing who these gangs are that are carrying out these raids and how they're able to get the guns they use, which appear to be quite sophisticated?
Yes, I would say so. At least in the space where I operate. I operate in the industrial security space, and I know there is enough information to tell us the perpetrators, the actors. There is enough information to tell us where their weapons are coming from. There is enough information to tell us who is influencing their activities. And there is enough information to tell us why they are doing what they are doing. Now, whether that information that is available in the industrial security space is also available in the public security space, which I hope anyway, because they've got more resources than those of us in the industrial security space. Why they are not using that information, unfortunately, is what I don't know. I wish, for instance, I know that at a point just before COVID started, they had identified the camps that these bandits were operating in, and there was an attempt really to methodically attack those camps. Why that was not completed, perhaps COVID had an effect on that, or some other considerations, I don't know. But then to answer your question directly, there is enough information to tell us who is involved and why they're doing what they're doing.
That's a very important point you made there, and I hope somebody important is listening and watching. But of course, it's a vicious circle, this whole kidnapping thing, isn't it? These people form themselves into gangs, they kidnap people, and the more you pay ransoms, the more you fuel the industry, because, I mean, they're getting paid for it. We've got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, you're right. It's a vicious cycle, and that is why in criminology, one of the easiest ways to tackle this type of criminal activities is to attack the proceeds. How do you stop them from enjoying the benefits of the activity they're involved in? In this case, that they collect financial ransom? How do we stop them from enjoying and benefiting from this ransom?
Dr. Adamu, thank you very much